All right, everybody, get your engines fired up. It's time for Lights Out, Let's Chat.
Okay, Barcelona just said, you thought Monaco was dramatic? How cute. Because this weekend had a little bit of everything. We had George Russell on pole, we had Lewis Hamilton starting on the front row for Ferrari, we had Kimi Antonelli looking like he might keep his ridiculous winning streak alive, we had McLaren looking fast, but not quite fast enough. We had Charles Leclerc's weekend going from promising to painful. We had Fernando Alonso heartbreak at home. We had a virtual safety car changing the entire race. We had post-race penalties. We had a bunch of cars not finishing. And the biggest headline of all time. Lewis Hamilton has won his first Grand Prix for Ferrari. Not a sprint, not a good result, not he's getting closer. A real Grand Prix win in red for Ferrari. So yes, we are absolutely talking about it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Lights Out Let's Chat, the F1 podcast where we make Formula One a little less confusing, a lot more fun, and hopefully a lot easier to follow. I'm Michaela, and today we are breaking down the 2026 Barcelona Grand Prix. And listen, this race was a lot. Barcelona is one of those tracks that teams know very well. It has high-speed corners, tire degradation, long corners where the car balance really matters, and enough strategy choices to make everyone on the pit wall start sweating. It is definitely not Monaco, where passing is basically a mythological creature. Barcelona gives you more chances to race, but it also punishes cars that are not balanced. If your tires are going away, everyone knows it. If your car is weak in high-speed corners, everyone knows. If your strategy is wrong, everyone definitely knows. So, today we are going through the whole weekend. Friday practicing, Saturday qualifying, Hamilton's win, Russell's pole, Antonelli's heartbreak, and McLaren's mixed up weekend. Ferrari's huge day and painful day at the same time, the DNFs, the penalties, and then we are going to end with question of the week and 3 major F1 stories of the week. And as always, we are keeping it beginner friendly. If you are still learning what a virtual safety car is, what tire degradation means, or why people keep yelling about pit strategy, you are in the right place. Now, let's get into Spain. Before we get into the weekend, let's talk about why Barcelona matters. The Circuit de Barcelona is one of those tracks that tells the truth about a car. Some tracks hide problems. Monaco can hide engine weaknesses because it's so slow and twisty. Some tracks reward straight line speed more than anything. Some tracks are weird enough that a car can be good there and nowhere else. Barcelona is different. Barcelona has a little bit of everything. Fast corners, slow corners, tire stress, braking zones, and long sections where aerodynamics matter. That means if your car works in Barcelona, it usually means your car is actually pretty good. This is why teams care so much about this race. It's not just about one Sunday. It tells them where they really stand, and this year, Barcelona gave us a very interesting answer. Mercedes had real one lap pace, Ferrari had real race pace, McLaren was strong but not dominant, Red Bull was in the fight but not quite there, and the midfield was messy, close, and honestly kind of chaotic. Also, tires were a huge part of the race. Tire degradation means the tire loses performance as they wear down. The car starts sliding more, lap times get slower, and the driver has to manage the car instead of just pushing every lap. Barcelona is tough on tires because the corners load the tires for a long time, especially in hot conditions. So, this was never going to be a simple start, drive, finish race. This was always going to be a strategy race, and Ferrari absolutely nailed the strategy with Hamilton. Let's start with Friday practice. The first thing we need to correct is that FP1 was not a normal session for every full-time driver. Several teams used FP1 rookie running, which is something F1 teams are required to do during the season. So, if you were looking at the times and thinking, wait, where's Lando Norris? Or, why isn't the youngest driver racing right now? Well, that's why. George Russell topped FP1 for Mercedes. Oscar Piastri was second for McLaren, and Charles Leclerc was third for Ferrari. That mattered because Russell looked comfortable immediately. Mercedes had come off a rough Monaco weekend, especially for Russell, and Barcelona looked like a chance to reset. Oscar Piastri being second showed McLaren was still very much in the mix. The car looked strong, and even though Lando was not in the car for FP1, McLaren still looked competitive. Leclerc in third was also encouraging for Ferrari. Ferrari was testing and learning, and even without Hamilton running that session, the car looked like it had pace. Max Verstappen was fourth, but Red Bull did not look like the automatic favorite. That is a big deal because in past seasons, there were weekends where Max and Red Bull showed up and the rest of the field was basically fighting for second place. This did not feel like that. There were also some rookie appearances. Leo Fernardi drove Norris McLaren, Fred Vesey drove Antonelli's Mercedes, Dino Begolshi drove Hamilton's Ferrari, Paul Aaron drove Hulkenberg's Audi, Colton Herta drove Perez Cadillac. Albon's Luke Browning was scheduled in Williams, but electrical problems kept that car in the garage. And honestly, that rookie running matters because fewer fans sometimes see FP1 results and think, oh, that driver's slow, or that team disappeared. But sometimes the regular driver is not even in the car. Practice sessions are just mini races. They are testing sessions, teams are gathering data, testing parts, trying tires, and sometimes giving rookie drivers required track time. So, the big FP1 takeaway was not McLaren dominated. It was Mercedes looked good, McLaren looked good, Ferrari was good. Red Bull was there, but not scary. Barcelona was already showing that this weekend was going to be tight. Then we have FP2, and this is where Lando Norris entered the chat. Norris topped FP2 for McLaren, and the margins at the top were tiny. George Russell was right behind him. Now, Oscar Piastri was third, so McLaren had both cars in the top three. That is a strong sign. Charles Leclerc was fourth, Kimi Antonelli was fifth, Max Verstappen was sixth, and Lewis Hamilton was ninth. Now, Hamilton being ninth sounds worse than it is. Practice times do not always tell the whole story. Teams run different fuel loads, different tire programs, and different setup experiments. One team might be doing a qualifying simulation while another is doing race pace with more fuel in the car. But the general feeling from FP2 was that McLaren and Mercedes were strong, Ferrari was still in the picture, and Red Bull did not look untouchable. That is important because FP2 is often one of the most useful practice sessions. It usually happens in conditions closer to qualifying or race conditions. Depending on the weekend, teams use it to understand tire wear, long run pace, and setup direction. And tire degradation was a huge topic. Barcelona was hot. The track temperature was high. The tire compounds were softer than last year. All that means tire management was going to be a major storyline. So, softer tires usually have more grip, but they wear out faster. Harder tires usually last longer, but they may not be as fast right away. So, teams are always trying to balance speed against tire life. That is why this race became such a strategy puzzle. Do you stop twice? Do you stop 3 times? Do you try to undercut someone? Do you wait for a safety car or a virtual safety car? Do you protect track position? Do you chase clean air? Ferrari answered those questions better than anyone else on Sunday. But on Friday, we were still figuring out who had the best car. Saturday practice kept the theme going. George Russell topped FP3. Oscar Piastri was second. Charles Leclerc was third. Lando Norris was fourth. Lewis Hamilton was fifth. Max Verstappen was sixth. Kimi Antonelli was seventh. So now we had a pattern. Russell was quick in FP1. Russell was almost fastest in FP2. Russell was fastest again in FP3. That was not a fluke anymore. Mercedes had a serious pace over 1 lap. McLaren was still strong with Piastri and Norris both near the front, but they did not look like they had a giant gap over everyone else. Ferrari looked competitive, especially with Leclerc near the top again, and Hamilton close enough that you knew he could be a factor. Red Bull was still in the top 6, but Verstappen was not sitting there looking like the obvious favorite. The field looked close, and close fields make qualifying fun because every little mistake matters. You cannot just be pretty good. You have to nail the lap. Barcelona is especially tricky because the car has to work through long corners. If the balance is wrong, you lose time everywhere. If the tires overheat, you lose time. If you push too hard early in the lap, you might not have enough tire left at the end. So, heading into qualifying, the big questions were, could Russell convert Mercedes' pace into pole? Could Hamilton put Ferrari on the front row? Could McLaren turn practice speed into qualifying success? Could Max Verstappen sneak into the fight? Could Leclerc recover from a slightly messy weekend and put Ferrari at the front row? And then Q3 happened. Qualifying gave us one of the biggest moments of George Russell's session. Russell took pole position for Mercedes with a 1:14.679. Hamilton qualified second for Ferrari, only 0.064 seconds behind. Antonelli was third, Norris fourth, Verstappen fifth, Hadjar sixth, Piastri seventh, Lawson eighth, Hulkenberg ninth, Leclerc 10th. So yes, George Russell absolutely delivered. After a tough Monaco, this was a major bounce back. He had looked quick all weekend, but there is a difference between looking quick in practice and actually putting the lap together when it counts. And he did just that. Lewis Hamilton qualifying second for Ferrari was huge too. This was not one of those Hamilton is somewhere in the top 10 and maybe something happens weekend. He was right there, front row, Ferrari in the fight, and he was only a tiny margin off pole. Antonelli in third was also strong. The rookie championship leader did not quite keep the front row streak alive, but P3 still put him in position to fight for the win. McLaren was a little bit of a mixed bag. Norris in P4 was solid, Piastri in P7 was not terrible, but probably not what McLaren wanted given how they looked in practice. Verstappen in P5 was also a sign that Red Bull had pace, but not enough to control the weekend. Now, we need to talk about Charles Leclerc. Leclerc crashed in Q3 after getting wide at turn 4, which ended his session and left him 10th. And that was painful because Ferrari had pace. We saw that on Friday. We saw that in FP3. We saw that with Hamilton on the front row, Leclerc had a real chance to be much higher up on the grid. But once you crash in Q3, that's it. You are done. No more laps, no more second chances. In qualifying, if you crash and cannot continue, you keep whatever time you already set. If you had no time in Q3, you are classified based on the rules and your earlier progress, but you are not getting another shot at pole. So, Ferrari had one car starting second and another car starting 10th. That set up two very different races for their drivers. Hamilton had a chance to win, Leclerc had to recover. At the start of the race, Russell did exactly what he needed to do. He got a strong launch and held off Hamilton into turn 1. Hamilton started on soft tires, which was aggressive. The soft tire gives more grip at the start. So Ferrari was clearly hoping he could attack Russell right away. But Russell reacted well, kept the lead, and controlled the opening phase. Behind them, Antonelli, Norris, and Verstappen held their positions. Leclerc, starting 10th after qualifying crash, had a strong opening lap. He gained positions early and immediately started trying to drag his Ferrari back into the race. Hadjar had the opposite kind of start. He started 6th but dropped down the order after a poor launch and wheel spin. That meant his race became a recovery drive. Now, wheel spins happen when the rear tires spin too much instead of gripping the track. The car does not launch forward efficiently, and the other cars can pass you. At the start of a race, one bad launch can cost you several positions instantly. So, early on, Russell looked in control, but the race was not going to be decided on lap 1. It was going to be decided by strategy. This race was a strategy battle, and Ferrari played it beautifully with Hamilton. Most people expected a 2-stop race because of tire degradation was high, but Ferrari went aggressive with Hamilton on a 3-stop strategy. For my newer fans, a 2-stop strategy means the driver pits twice and uses 3 sets of tires. A 3-stop means the driver pits 3 times and uses 4 sets of tires. 3 stops can be faster if fresh tires give enough lap time advantage to make up for the extra pit stop. But it is risky because every pit stop costs time. Hamilton started on softs. Then Ferrari moved early. That forced Mercedes to react. Once Hamilton committed to the aggressive strategy, Mercedes had to decide whether to cover him, stay out, or split approaches. The key moment came with the virtual safety car. Now, a virtual safety car, or VCS, is used when there is a danger on track but not enough to require a full safety car. Every driver has to slow down to a controlled pace. Because everyone is driving slower, time lost during a pit stop can be smaller than normal. That can make a pit stop cheaper. Hamilton got the perfect timing. He gained a huge advantage with the VCS pit stop and came out in the lead. From there, he had the pace to pull away. That is why strategy mattered so much. This was not just luck. Yes, the VSC timing helped, but Ferrari already put Hamilton into a position where that VSC could help him. They had the pace, they had the strategy, and Hamilton delivered the laps. There is a phrase in F1. You can make your own luck. Ferrari did that here, and Hamilton did not waste it. Let's just sit with this for a second. Lewis Hamilton won his first Grand Prix for Ferrari. That is massive. Hamilton is already one of the greatest drivers Formula One has ever had. But moving to Ferrari is different. Ferrari is not just another team. Ferrari is Ferrari. The pressure is different. The attention is different. The emotion is different. And after everything, the adaptation, the criticism, the waiting, the questions about whether it would happen, he finally got that first win in red. This was his 106th career Grand Prix victory. It ended a long winless run, and it made him a Grand Prix winner with McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari. That is history. And the podium was also special because it was Hamilton, Russell, Norris, an all-British podium. The first all-British podium since 1968. For newer fans, that is one of those stats that sound random until you think about how many races there have been since then. Formula One has had British drivers for decades, but getting 3 of them on the same podium is rare. And this was not a weird inherent win where the fastest cars all disappeared and Hamilton just happened to be standing there. Ferrari had pace. Hamilton drove well. The strategy worked. The team executed. He won by almost 20 seconds. That is a statement. The Ferrari fans are going to be unbearable in the best way. George Russell finished second, and this was one of those results that is both really good and probably frustrating. On one hand, he took pole. He led the early part of the race. He finished P2 after a rough Monaco. That is a strong response. On the other hand, he started on pole and didn't win. That is always going to sting. Mercedes had the pace over 1 lap, but they did not quite have enough control in the race. Their strategy options became complicated once Ferrari committed Hamilton to the aggressive 3-stop, and the VSC timing hurt them. Russell also had to deal with Antonelli later in the race. Antonelli actually passed him and looked set to finish second before the Mercedes issue ended Kimi's race. So, Russell got P2, which is good points, but Mercedes will probably look at this and think, we should have done more. And then your teammate retires from P2 with only a few laps left. That changes the mood. It is hard to fully celebrate a podium when the team knows they left points on the table. Now let's talk about Kimi Antonelli. This one's going to hurt. Antonelli came into Barcelona as the championship leader. He won 5 races in a row. He was the rookie sensation. He looked calm, fast, and honestly kind of terrifying for everyone else. He qualified third and was in the fight all race. Late in the race, he passed Russell and moved into second. That would have been another huge result. Not a win, but still major championship damage control on a day Hamilton was winning. And then the car stopped. Yep, that's right. His car just stopped on the track. Basically, he had an electrical shutdown, retired 4 laps from the finish. It was brutal to watch. Not just emotionally, but championship-wise. Instead of finishing second and scoring 18 points, Antonelli scored nothing. Hamilton won and took 25 points. Russell got 18, Norris got 15. That is a massive swing. For some of my newer fans joining in the podcast, DNFs can completely change a championship. It's not just that you lose that race. It is that your rivals score while you score 0. A 25-point swing in one race can change the entire feel of the season. And this was not the first recent concern for Mercedes. George Russell had also lost a race-leading result in Canada due to a retirement. So, Mercedes has a problem to solve. You can have the fastest car, the best driver lineup, the best qualifying pace, but if the car does not finish, none of that matters. There is an old racing saying, to finish first, you have to finish. It's very annoying, but very true at the same time. Now, McLaren, as a McLaren fan, this was one of those weekends where you're happy, but also a little annoyed. Lando Norris finished third. That is a podium. That's good. Those are strong points. He was in the fight near the front and kept pressure on the cars ahead. Oscar Piastri finished fifth. Again, points. Not a disaster. But McLaren looked so good in practice that you probably wanted more. Norris topped FP2. Piastri was second in FP1 and FP3. The car looked strong. But in qualifying, Norris was fourth and Piastri was seventh. In the race, they were good, but they were not winning good. That is the difference. McLaren was competitive, but Ferrari and Mercedes had the sharper edge this weekend. Norris got promoted to podium after Antonelli retired, but he was not quite in position to beat Hamilton on pure pace and strategy. Piastri had a harder day. He struggled with the grip and lost out to Leclerc early. He still came home fifth, which is solid, but not the result McLaren would have expected from how the weekend started. So, McLaren takeaway is still fast, still consistent, still very much in the fight. But Barcelona showed that McLaren cannot just assume they are going to be the strongest every weekend. Ferrari has arrived, Mercedes is still dangerous, Red Bull is still there. This championship is getting spicy, and that was only race 6. Red Bull finished 4th with Max Verstappen and 6th with Isaac Hadjar. That is not terrible, but for Red Bull, not terrible is not usually the goal. Verstappen started 5th and finished 4th after Antonelli retired. He was on an alternate strategy and did what he could, but the big issue was pace. He did not have enough to fight Hamilton, Russell, or Norris. And Max basically said the team just did not have the pace on this kind of track. Barcelona is a high energy, high degradation circuit. That means it stresses the tires and exposes cars' weaknesses. Red Bull did not look awful, they were not in control. Hadjar had a messy start with wheel spin and dropped from 6th to 14th. That hurt his race immediately, but he recovered well, made overtakes, and finished 6th. That is actually a good recovery drive, but if his start had been better, he might have been fighting Piastri or even closer to the front group. So, for Red Bull, Barcelona was a points weekend, but not a statement weekend. They need more pace. And when Red Bull says they need 4 or 5 tenths to fight for wins at this type of track, that's not a tiny little twerk. That is some insane work they have to put in. This race changed the championship picture. Antonelli still leads, but Hamilton cut into that lead in a big way. Before this, Antonelli had a huge cushion because he had been on a 5-race winning streak. Now, Barcelona ended that streak. Hamilton winning and Antonelli retiring makes the title fight feel very different. Suddenly, Ferrari is not just chasing podiums. Hamilton is in the conversation. Russell also gained big points with second place, which helps Mercedes, but the team will still be frustrated because of Antonelli's retirement cost them a massive haul. McLaren continues to score well, but if they want to fight for championships, weekends like this need to become wins, not just podiums. Red Bull needs more pace at tracks like this. Ferrari needs both cars finishing. Mercedes needs reliability. And that is the whole championship right now in one sentence. Nobody has a perfect situation. And that is what makes the season fun. Before we end this episode, let's dive into question of the week. This week's question is, after Barcelona, who looks like the biggest threat to Kimi Antonelli's championship lead? Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Lando Norris, or someone else? Because before this race, Antonelli looked like he was building a serious cushion. 5 wins in a row is not normal. Mercedes looked like the team to beat, and Kimi looked calm under pressure. But then Barcelona happened. Hamilton won for Ferrari and suddenly looks like a real championship threat. Russell took pole and finished second, reminding everyone that he is still right there. Norris got another podium for McLaren, and even if McLaren did not have winning pace this weekend, they keep scoring. Verstappen is still Verstappen, even if Red Bull was not fast enough in Barcelona. So, what do you think? Is Hamilton now the biggest threat because Ferrari finally looks like it can win? Is Russell the biggest threat because he has Mercedes pace and just needs clean weekends? Is Norris still quietly in this fight because McLaren keeps bringing home points? Or is Antonelli still comfortably the favorite if Mercedes fixes reliability? My answer right now is Hamilton is the most interesting threat, but Russell might be more constant one if Mercedes shorts out the reliability. Hamilton's win changes the emotions of the season. It gives Ferrari belief, it gives the fans belief, and it gives Lewis proof that the move to Ferrari can actually produce wins. But Russell is still sitting in a very strong car, just took pole and finished second. If Mercedes can stop throwing away points through liability problems, he could absolutely stay in the title conversation. That said, Antonelli is still the championship leader. One DNF hurts, but it does not erase 5 wins. So my final answer is Hamilton is the headline threat, Russell is the quiet threat, and Antonelli is still the one everyone is chasing. But I want to know what you think. Drop your answers. Hamilton, Russell, Norris, Verstappen, or still Antonelli all the way. Now let's dive into F1 news of the week. There are 3 major stories from this weekend because this was not just a race result. There are bigger storylines coming out of Barcelona. The biggest story is obviously Lewis Hamilton has finally won for Ferrari. And this is not just emotional because it is Ferrari. It changes how we talk about the season. Before this, Hamilton was improving, Ferrari was getting closer, and people were asking when the first win would come. Now, it has happened. That matters for confidence. It matters for team energy. It matters for championship pressure. And it matters for the rest of the grid because Ferrari now has proof that the car can win. The important thing is not just that Hamilton won, it's how he won. Ferrari had pace, Ferrari made the aggressive call, Hamilton executed, the pit stops worked, the VSC timing helped, but the team had put him in position to benefit. That is the difference between luck and preparation. Ferrari did not stumble into this win. They built it, and Hamilton looked like Hamilton. Story number 2 is going to be about Mercedes. Mercedes still has a very strong car, with Russell taking pole, but Antonelli was running second late. The team is leading the championship fight, but reliability is becoming a serious concern. Antonelli retired from second in Barcelona with an electrical shutdown. Russell had already lost race leading result in Canada. That is a lot of points thrown away. And when you are fighting for a championship, you cannot keep giving away big results. This is not just bad luck. At some point, if it happens more than once, it becomes a pattern. The team has to fix it. Mercedes has speed. That is definitely not the question. The question is whether they can finish races reliably enough to beat Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull over a full season, because Hamilton just showed that if Mercedes leaves the door open, Ferrari will walk through it wearing red and waving at everyone. The third big story is in the midfield. Alpine scored with Gasly and Colapinto, even after Colapinto's penalty. Racing Bulls scored with Larson and Lindblad after the penalty promoted them. Audi had pace but left with nothing after Hülkenberg's weird gravel triggered shutdown and Balletto's finishing with outside the points. Williams struggled badly at the track that exposed their weaknesses. Cadillac got Perez to finish, but Bottas retired again. And the team is still trying to close the gap. Aston Martin had a brutal home race for Alonso, with both cars retiring. This matters because the midfield is where small details decide everything. A penalty, a VSC, one bad launch, one reliability issue, one slow pit stop. That can be the difference between points and nothing. And right now, the midfield feels like a fight where nobody is safe. That is great for us as viewers. Probably terrible for everyone's blood pressure on the pit wall, but definitely worth watching. My final thought on Barcelona is this. The race made the season feel alive. Monaco is dramatic, but Monaco is its own weird little universe. Barcelona is different. Barcelona tells us more about the cars, and Barcelona told us Ferrari is real. Mercedes is fast but vulnerable. McLaren is close, and Red Bull has work to do. Hamilton's win is the big emotional story, and it should be. First Ferrari win, first all-British podium since 1968, huge strategy calls, huge championship swing, but the deeper story is that nobody looks unbeatable. Mercedes has reliability questions, Ferrari has momentum but needs both cars finishing. McLaren is good, but needs to turn good into great. Red Bull is scoring but not dominating, and Antonelli, even after the DNF, is still the championship leader, which is wild because we are talking about a rookie. Like, he has been here for 10 years. Barcelona did what Barcelona does. It exposes the truth. And the truth is, this season is getting very, very interesting. But that is it for today's Barcelona Grand Prix recap. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow or subscribe to Lights Out, Let's Chat, wherever you are listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, leave a comment, and answer the question of the week. Who is the biggest threat for Kimi Antonelli's championship lead after Barcelona? Hamilton, Russell, Norris, Verstappen, or is Antonelli still the clear favorite? Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Until next time, lights out, let's chat.
From Lights Out to the Checkered Flag, this has been Lights Out, Let's Chat podcast. We'll see you next